government and TRAI, which is the Telecom Regulatory Authority, has now asked all telcos to give them details around pesky calls, people who are sending bulk messages, bulk calls to customers on a regular basis. Another attempt, Krishna, being made by the government and by telecom regulator to tighten noose around telemarketing calls and to make lives easy for customers.
Oh, absolutely. It's clearly, Shweta, we've been seeing this, from the digital consent acquisition facility to more and more measures being made. I'm guessing enough and more representation have been made by people to the authorities, to the powers that be about these pesky calls, because we've seen them become a social menace. We've seen them become a huge problem for people who end up eventually losing money, losing their life savings because of the wrong call that they chose to pick up. We've seen so many examples of different ways of people using the telemarketing route. Just access to people's phone numbers is enough for people to be swindled. So this is a problem that is peaking as we speak, with the aid of internet and technology and all that we're able to do, all the digital transactions we're able to do. Now that coupled with telemarketing is making things extremely complicated for people to hold on to their hard-earned money. And it is extremely I'm extremely happy to know that both the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India and the Telecom Department, the Department of Telecom, the Government of India are taking this up on a daily basis and pushing the envelope as much as they can to make sure that the pesky calls are kept in control. We'll have to wait for the digital consent acquisition facility to come up, the digital platform where customers can register their consent. They can also revoke their content on that platform. That platform will take less than 2 months to be set up. So once that's set up, I think, Shweta, we'll get a final clarity on how better we can manage these pesky calls and how many we can keep them out.
Okay, Karthik, there have been deadlines on deadlines given, and we've tracked this story over the course of last 2 to 3 weeks, where government has also asked essentially all telecom operators to come up with a digital consent acquisition facility, a central database where users, customers like you and me can give our consent as and when, if we want these telemarketing calls. I don't know if anybody wants these telemarketing calls, but essentially a central database as opposed to various entities registering consent on their own site. There has to be a central place where consent is registered and revoked as and when needed. There have been deadlines on deadlines given, but as of now, people continue to be bothered by pesky calls. Not much has happened.
That's right, Shweta, and that's unfortunate. But this time around, what I am a little more excited about is that there's a clear directive to telcos by TRAI to implement artificial intelligence and machine learning, AI and ML, to really identify patterns on these spam calls, right? Now, what is happening is spam calls today are not limited to toll-free numbers or landline numbers. These are 10-digit mobile numbers which are calling you, and these could be anywhere from from a credit card company to a soft loan company to anything else, property, real estate, whatever. So there are these 10-digit numbers which are difficult for you to discern whether it's a real person trying to call you or is it a telemarketer, and telemarketers technically are registered under the DLT scheme of TRAI. So if you're an authentic official telemarketer, you need to register your headers and your text with the TRAI, and once you get that approval through whichever service provider you're using, you can go ahead and send telemarketing messages. But what happens is there's no cap on that as well. So the second part here is, in addition to AI and ML to identify patterns on spamming, the second thing now comes in that cap the number of messages or calls that a singular telemarketer or a singular marketing agency contracted with a certain product can make to a certain customer. You can't send messages every day, make calls 5 times a day. So I think a cap has to be arrived at. So that is the second thing. The third thing is these 10-digit mobile numbers, which seem fairly akin to a regular person using a mobile phone and making calls, those 10-digit numbers need to be done away with. And the best thing is that there's a compliance window of 30 days given this time around. So, so telcos need to comply with this in the next 30 days, or at least submit a progress report, because AI/ML is not something they can implement in 30 days. So let's be realistic. So coming back to your question on timelines and not adhering to timelines, yeah, I think timelines also they need to be created in a more constructive manner and in a more educated manner, by understanding what is the end goal you want to achieve and what are the steps involved in reaching that goal, and thereby assigning relevant, realistic timelines, which are agreeable to the telcos as well as to the authorities. Because having said that, it's also a source of revenue for telecom companies. Telemarketers, SMSs being sent out are priced very differently when it comes to telemarketing than personal exchange of messages or phone calls. So it's a great source of revenue as well. So telcos are not going to be very happy doing away with spam calls altogether, but I think a little exercise of caution, of capping is essential, and of course understanding patterns where fraud financial frauds take place, where links are sent and those links are not authenticated. That is where that whole DLT registration getting more strengthened comes in.
Okay.
So, if you're sending a message, that message could have a header. If, let's say, as News 9, we want to send messages to people to come and watch our programs, we'll have to register a header that says, let's say, News 9 call or whatever, and then there's a body, come watch our show, and a link embedded. But then it is the job of the telcos to verify whether the link that we are sending is a genuine, authentic link, or is it going to lead the user to a point where the user can be a victim of a fraud.
Okay. And since you mentioned timelines and you're hopeful, I am not hopeful as much
Neither
as
am
you
I.
are.
I'm saying AI/ML cannot be implemented in 30 days
absolutely.
unless there is groundwork already done in the backdrop, and now it is just about pressing the go live button.
Right. And I understand the problem that telcos have at this point in time. How many calls, to what extent can you stop? Because essentially, as you rightly pointed out, many of these calls are coming from regular 10-digit numbers.
That's right.
So it's very difficult to identify whether it's a telemarketing call or a regular person calling.
For us, yeah, but I think for the AI/ML tool, it'll be easy to understand, because you're seeing here, there is this one number which is making 1,000
Repeated
calls in a day
right.
to people not in the contact list, and repeating that exercise day after day. I think for a machine, it would be far easier to understand that let's go after this number and take action, as opposed to individuals trying to do that.
I think Amit wants to come in.
No, it's the same point. They can have algorithms. You have Truecaller, that's an app. So they have algorithms where numbers that are being repeatedly being used to make unlisted calls,
Right.
they can be basically tracked and fielded. I would say the government was, with the success they had with an app like Setu when COVID came, why don't they come up with an app like that for basically tracking these kinds of calls? And this app can be made available to the people. I'm sure that the IT sleuths will have algorithms enough to basically take care of this problem too, before AI and even without AI and ML.
Okay. Krishna?
It's gone to the stage where, as Karthik was pointing out, you have some people using their personal mobile numbers to make these calls, which even a Truecaller doesn't detect.
Yeah,
because
true.
if they call from that regular number to sell what they need to sell, then the Truecaller, because of prior whatever analysis, it will be able to track that number. Now you have these people using their personal mobile numbers to make these calls. So even the Truecaller doesn't. So that's the situation we are in. And also, you're looking at some people who are just angry when you don't pick up, or you keep cutting your call, and the same number keeps calling you 4 to 5 times a day, as if they think it's their right to get in touch with you to tell you, how dare you not pick up the call? It's really, Shweta, the only point I want to make is that it's going to a situation where it's very extremely acrimonious, and they believe they have the right to call us. So I think that's where we are right now, and we need to, start stemming the flow, stemming the rot.
Right, and it is a very important story, because this is something we've been tracking with respect to pesky calls, and I understand your sentiments around pesky calls, Krishna, because it is a menace, and I think it is a menace to everyone. But telecos so far have said that there is very little that they were able to do to control, who's calling whom. But with AI and machine learning, we are optimistic that it will be made possible. Another important aspect of telemarketing is also, where do people get your data from, and how is it leaked essentially to various telemarketers, or those loan apps, or people who want to sell you that insurance. That is also a problem. So while it's a problem that you're getting these calls in the first place and telecos are not able to control it, it's also important to arrest how our data is made available to these agencies.
No doubt. I think data security, data protection, not just in India, the world over, is a big concern right now. Whether you talk about social media giants who are being taken to court and taken to task on data protection, or whether you talk about
companies.
BFSI companies, automobile companies, our data, unfortunately, in this highly digital world, you need to enter your phone number or your email ID practically anywhere on the internet to get into anything, whether it's an OTT subscription, whether it is online shopping, whether it is to read content, whether it is to sign up for an email ID or continue using your email ID. Practically anything requires your phone number and your email ID. So imagine the number of gates through which this data could pass and arrive at streets where it is unwarranted. So I think it's a difficult job to contain data security, but this is where I think the Europe has taken the lead with its GDPR regulations, that it is so watertight, and the penalty and the sort of implementation is so watertight that it's very difficult for companies to access your data, decrypt your encrypted data, and truth be told, if that data leaks, you are in real bad trouble in the Europe. Unfortunately, in India, we haven't arrived at that stage yet, but I think we should get there in time. We've had bigger problems to deal with the last many decades, but I think IT and digitization has leveled the playing field, where we have been pretty much at par, if not in many instances well ahead of the Western world. And I think when it comes to regulations around data security, data protection, there has been this new data protection bill also in the works for a very long time, and it has been passed a couple of times as well with minor iterations. But I think its implementation and ensuring that its compliance is completely watertight is something that needs to really see light of the day.
So the way I see it, it's a two-part problem.
And as we are speaking, I'm getting a spam call right now.
Okay, wonderful. So a reality there for everybody, all of us who continue to be pestered with calls from telemarketing agencies. As I see it, it's a two-part problem. A, your data that is easily made available to all these agencies who think it is their right to call you at any point of time to sell you that service, sell you that product. And B, the inability of telecom companies to identify these spam calls and stop them. So you can nip it in the bud by making sure that data privacy and data sharing is watertight. Only those agencies that are authorized to get hold of your data, get your data, and not every other company that wants to sell you their product or services.